The Fed15 podcast is presented by Serving Those Who Serve, a financial planning practice serving federal government employees and retirees all over the country. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be taken as financial advice. All listeners should consult their personal advisors before taking any action. The opinions expressed by our hosts are their own and do not reflect the views, policies, or position of either Raymond James or Serving Those Who Serve. Securities are offered through Raymond James Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors, Inc. Serving Those Who Serve is not a registered broker-dealer and is independent of Raymond James Financial Services, Inc.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Fed15 podcast, presented by Serving Those Who Serve. Each week, Dan and I will discuss the latest news and info that feds need to know in 15 minutes or less. So whether you are a seasoned federal employee or whether you're just starting out in your career, Fed15 has got you covered. So grab your coffee, kick back, and we'll tell you what you need to know but might have missed in the space this week. Now, as I mentioned, we are your hosts. I'm Katelyn Murray. I am joined by Dan Sipe. Today on this blustery winter morning.
Yeah, very much like the place you just visited, right? The weather is almost eerily similar.
Yeah, very similar. Listeners, I am back from a all too brief, tropical getaway in Belize, the peninsula, rather, of Placencia, Belize. And I have to say, I highly recommend. It is a very beautiful place. Met lots of Canadian and American expats there while I was there. It was very cool.
And you came back with a cool little saying.
I did. I shared it in our team meeting this week. So we do, here at Serving Those Who Serve, we do word and quote of the day for our team meetings because we're always trying to expand our vocabularies and also just feed our brains. So this week, I brought a saying all the way back from Belize. The saying is 1-1 Crabu fill barrel. It is a Creole saying in Belize. Now, this is Creole, not Louisiana, America. This is Creole as in 100 different Caribbean languages that are kind of mixtures of other languages. But what the saying means is essentially every little bit counts. A crabu is a type of fruit in Belize that makes excellent cocktails, I have to say. But it's sweet, it's tart, it kind of tastes like if a pear was a cherry.
Ooh, interesting.
That's my new description. I thought about it. I'm like, this is kind of like if a pear was a cherry. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So anyway, if you're looking for a place to take a fabulous vacation, use some of that annual leave time, I got to tell you, Belize is pretty nice. And it's pretty easy to travel there, too, as an American. So
nice.
we've got pretty good relationship.
So what do we have up for folks today, Katelyn?
All right. So today, back to the old grind. Today, we are talking with our feds about what they need to know about side gigs. Dana's going to share a bit about, if you're a fed, you want to pick up a side gig for a little bit of extra income. There are some things that you need to consider when you're taking that on. And then I am going to go over a very popular topic for our feds. If a vacation just isn't quite cutting it for you, we're going to talk about the best dates for feds to retire. And here at Serving Those Who Serve, we like to be a little bit extra. We like to do a little bit more. So we're not just talking about the best days to retire in 2025. We're talking about the best days to retire in 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028, 2029, and all the way out to 2030. We've got them for you. And we'll talk about it in a moment. But first, Dan, tell us about what things that we should keep in mind when we're thinking about working more with a side gig.
Sure. Well, more and more people are picking up side hustles, side gigs, things like that. In general, I'm for, because I think it generally brings many times a different way of thinking, different approach to things that brings a little bit of spice and some additional money coming in. Now, what a lot of people may not know here at LSA and Serving Those Who Serve, I do all this front-facing stuff, but I'm actually the back office nerd historically for certain things like, what are the rules? How do taxes affect it? So I'm uniquely qualified to talk about this. So yes, you can absolutely set up side gigs, but there are rules and regs to go along with it. So it can't conflict with your government duties. So you can't sell to the government. You can't use federal resources working with a company that does business for the agency, or work with a regulated company outside. But for things like being an online instructor, that's a big thing for subject matter experts popping up. And yes, you can always, if you want to meet new people, you can be a rideshare driver. That was always devil magic to me for so many years before I actually came to understand it. And I actually had a client of many years, ultimately passed away, whose wife made extraordinary Christmas art. So that was like a second little thing for them. They sold them. They're fantastic. Gail Morford originals. They're unbelievable. Maybe I'll bring one on for Christmas and show you all because it was fantastic. But people are setting up those little businesses on Etsy as well. So obviously a couple of things. Income from the second job isn't going to feed your pension. Okay. And it's obviously not going to count towards high 3 or anything like that. Get into the rules and regs. Any supplemental income above $400, got to report it to the IRS, and self-employment taxes need to be paid. Okay, so that's 15.3%. You also will need to file quarterly estimated taxes on that. Don't miss this stuff, folks. It's a lot easier to do than you think, so just don't miss it. So you're going to want to calculate that anticipated income, divide by 4, and make quarterly payments, and set aside for that. Now, any deductions associated with these side gigs, okay, can reduce taxable income. Keep your records. And then when in doubt, keep your records. Now, interesting relationship with your federal service. If you've got the side gig going and maybe you're not maximizing TSP, increase the TSP contribution by your side gig money, okay, because that's really going to help you down the road. You also may be able to add to an outside IRA or possibly a Roth. It is also possible, this is not saying it's a blanket thing, you may be able to do something called a SEP IRA, but it has to be coordinated with what you're doing with TSP so that you don't over-contribute. When in doubt, get some help, whether you talk to us, talk to an accountant, or do your homework out on the net to look at these types of things. You can also set aside that money in a traditional investment account, which can be pretty attractive because capital gains rates are typically lower than income taxes. But again, now we're back to I'm taking the fun away. Check with your department policies. Some agencies have stricter rules. Okay. Know those guidelines before taking on the gig. Okay. Discuss it with your supervisor. Okay. To prevent any work issues, and be sure to avoid conflicts of interest. And I'll bring it back again because I'm this nerd. Keep detailed records. Okay. Your future self will absolutely positively thank you. And so by following those guidelines, understanding taxes, side income can help clear debt, bring awesome vacations like, I don't know, where you can go where they have Kaboo, and also boosting retirement savings. So that's me, Katelyn. Now, drum roll. Let's tell everybody the best dates to retire for the next 5 years.
Let's do it. Love it. Yeah. No, I think this is a good episode for folks, whether you're dreaming of vacation or whether you're dreaming for permanent vacation with a retirement. We are, there for you with that. So this is not the first time that we posted an article of this kind, obviously talking to thousands of feds, a year here at Serving Those Who Serve. When should I retire is a major, major, major question. And let me be clear. Without full financial context, I cannot pinpoint for you the exact date that you should retire. If I toss out that May 30th is a great date to retire in a given year, if you don't meet retirement qualifications, right? If you're not of the right age and MRA, it's probably not a good day for you to retire. So let's kind of, keep all things, take all things with a grain of salt. Retirement is a lot more complicated than just the two factors that we're going to be talking about today that allowed us to choose these best dates. Make sure that you have a plan in place before you retire, because ultimately the best day to retire is when you've got a plan in place and you know what you're doing, right? So with all of that in mind, we are going to examine, there's a couple different kind of key factors that go into choosing the right retirement date. And really in this article, we focus on two. Ideally, you want to leave on the final day of the pay period so that you get credit for all the annual leave that you accrued in that pay period. Most feds are accruing 8 hours of annual leave per pay period. And the issue with, the reason it's such a big deal to leave on the final day in the pay period is if you retire just one day earlier in that pay period, you could forfeit the annual leave that you earned during that period. It's not a pro rata thing. It's not like they'll pay you out, on a pro rata basis for it. So be very aware of that. There's something very tricky about this, okay? That is federal employees' pay periods technically end on Saturdays, even though it's not a business day. So for the purpose of wanting to retire on the last day of a pay period, that's going to mean retiring on a Saturday. Now, it's not a problem because as a Fed, you can retire any day that you want. You can retire on weekends, you can retire on Saturdays, you can retire on Sundays, you can retire on a holiday if you want. So make sure if you want to get that full 8 hours that you accrued in that last pay period, make sure that you're setting that retirement date for the final day in a pay period, which is going to be effectively a Saturday. And for some of our Feds, by the way, especially some of the more highly compensated folks, those 8 hours of leave, you may think that we're nitpicking a little bit, and I do for my Feds because I want you guys to get every single penny that you're owed. But for a lot of our highly comped people, those 8 hours, that can translate to $800, $700. It's a lot of money. So be mindful of that. The second thing that you're going to want to be mindful of is for my FERS folks, you want to try to time your retirement for the end of a month. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky because when it comes to retiring at the end of a month, you're going to want to choose the last business day. Okay. Weekends don't count as far as retiring at the end of a month. So let me give you an example. It'll make more sense. If you are retiring on Friday, November 28th, your first pension would start December 1st because Saturday, November 29th and Sunday, November 30th are weekends. So for the purposes of, is my first pension going to start next month, the first of next month, Saturdays and Sundays don't matter. However, for the purposes of, I want to make sure that I get my last 8 hours of accrued annual leave paid out, Saturdays do matter. So going back to our example of retiring on Friday, November 28th, if I decided to retire one day earlier on Thursday, November 27th, if I'm under FERS, what that would mean is my pension would get delayed until January 1st of 2025. I would not get paid out the first of next month because I did not retire at month end. So obviously in both of those scenarios, retiring on a Thursday, retiring on a Friday, I'm not getting my 8 hours of annual leave paid out because I'm not retiring at the end of the pay period. So I can't tell you how many times I've had people who are, dedicated. They want to finish their last pay period of working and they set their retirement date as that Friday and they lose those 8 hours of annual leave. Again, not the end of the world if it happened to you, but if it hasn't happened to you yet, we want to make sure that it doesn't. So with no further ado, I'm going to run down the list here really quickly of the best states to retire. You can also find this article on our website if we're moving too fast, or if you want to bookmark it for a little bit of hope that you can go back to on rough days. All right. Nice. So for 2025, the two dates that fall on the end of a pay period and retiring at month's end are May 31st and November 29th. For 2026, those dates are May 30th and October 31st. For 2027, it's a rough year. There's only one date that year. It's October 30th. For 2028, you're looking at April 29th and September 30th. For 2029, you are looking at March 31st and September 29th. And then for 2030, you are looking at August 31st and March 30th. Those are the dates that we're looking at, okay? And again, those are ideal, quote unquote, by definition that they fall at the end of a pay period and at the end of a month, ensuring you get your full 8 hours of annual leave paid out and you get a first pension starting the first day of the next month. Now, if income isn't a concern and you've stockpiled a little cachet of funds to get yourself through the first couple months of retirement, I recommend it because that annuity is not going to be full strength when you first start it. If income's not a concern, you may not need to worry about retiring at the end of a pay period, okay? There's going to be a lot more flexibility there because there's 26 or 27 pay periods per year. Okay. But I don't know that I would ever recommend retiring before the end of a pay period if you can avoid it, because why give up annual leave when you don't have to? Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, there's one last caveat here that I want to make sure we cover. A lot of feds view December 31st as the ideal retirement date because it's going to have your first pension starting on January 1st. This can be advantageous if you've got some interesting tax things going on and you need to bump your lump sum annual leave payout check to the following year. That can be a strategy from a tax planning standpoint. However, that's not specifically what we're talking about in the context of this article. I highly, highly, highly recommend, going back to what I said up top, the best date for you to retire is the date that you have a plan in place and you know kind of what your strategy is. If you don't know what your strategy is, if you don't know what your plan is, and you don't have any resources to talk to, I recommend reaching out to us here at Serving Those Who Serve. You can send us an email to askstws@stwserve.com, and we'd be happy to help you make a plan, okay?
Absolutely. Hey, great stuff. And we don't want them to miss out on any craboos.
No.
Okay, whether
No.
annual leave craboos or anything like that. So, folks, that's all we have time for today. I know you're disappointed, but we will be back next week to bring you the latest updates you need to know to make informed decisions about your career and financial well-being as a Fed.
Absolutely. And hey, analytics is showing us lately that 82% of folks who are watching our videos on YouTube are not subscribed. So if you are that person and you are watching this video on YouTube, please, please, please click the subscribe button down below to subscribe to our channel. Make sure you never miss an episode. If you're joining us on Spotify, you can also subscribe there. Please, please, please also remember to share with your friends and colleagues. Help us boost the signal. Help us educate and reach more Feds.
And another way to not miss out on anything, to all the topics we cover on the show and more, subscribe to our blog at blog.stwserve.com, the weekly serving. All the latest will be shipped right to your email box every single week. You don't have to go looking for it.
Absolutely. Another great hack for that is to set STWserve.com as your homepage on your browser, on your Chrome browser or Internet Explorer, if anybody's using Internet Explorer anymore, Edge. Whatever, but just setting STWserve.com as your homepage can also make sure that you stay connected with us. And for those who want to dive even deeper into learning about federal benefits and financial planning for Feds, we encourage you to join us for one of our complimentary webinars coming up. We have a FERS webinar. This is a great jumping off point. I always tell people, if you've never been to a webinar with us before and you're under FERS, start with the FERS webinar. It's a great place to start. That's going to be on February 4th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. The fabulous Dan Sipe will be hosting that one. And then we also have a tax planning session that's coming up on February 12th of 2025. And that will also be with Dan. That's from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Now, of course, if you prefer a one-on-one approach, feel free to reach out to our team directly for a financial planning consultation at askstws@stwserve.com.
Well, I think that's a wrap, folks. So thank you for listening to Fed15. I'm Dan Sipe.
And I'm Katelyn Murray.
And we will see you next week.
See you there.